Hello and welcome to Lost Love Chronicles.
It all started a decade ago when I joined the office. Her name was Janice, and our relationship was nothing short of pure hatred. Literally, from the moment we met, I knew I despised her with every fiber of my being. My hatred wasn't entirely irrational. I had landed an interview and joined the company a decade ago. Janice was already there when I walked in on my first day. My boss summoned her as she was my senior and instructed her to brief me on the basics. The way she looked at me, filled with disdain, weirded me out. Initially, I thought I might be imagining things, but as she walked me to my desk, any doubts I had turned into certainty. The way she talked to me, with the rudest tone imaginable, without even bothering to look at me, left me in shock. Before I could say anything or ask questions, she simply pointed to my desk and instructed me to do whatever tasks were assigned. It was far from normal, or at least I hoped it wasn't. Glancing around at others working at their desks, they seemed normal. So why did Janice act that way? As I picked up a file and started working, I couldn't shake off the strange encounter. During the lunch break, I headed to the cafeteria, waiting for coffee. The man in front of me, while filling his cup, smiled at me. Awkwardly, I smiled back. He asked if I was new, and I confirmed that I had just joined that day. He warned me against the sandwiches, claiming they sucked big time, but praised the burgers. At least the coffee was excellent. Grateful for the free advice, I thanked him. Unlike Janice, this man, Jack, seemed friendly. He inquired if I had made any acquaintances, and despite the weird encounter with Janice, I decided to be honest. I told him about the boss asking her to show me around and how she was neither pleasant nor friendly. Jack was shocked to hear that about her. According to him, she was one of the nicest people there. He wished me luck and was about to leave but returned, realizing we hadn't exchanged names. He introduced himself as Jack, and I reciprocated. Talking to Jack only intensified my concern about Janice's behavior toward me. Days passed, and I gradually settled into my new office routine. Surprisingly, I didn't entirely hate the long hours, and I had made good acquaintances with most of my coworkers, except for one, Janice. She remained the same, and every interaction with her was consistently cold. She was never polite to me, and strangely, hardly ever rude to anyone else in the office. Frustration built up within me. I couldn't recall doing anything on the first day that would warrant such intense animosity from her. Eventually, I decided to reciprocate her attitude. I started treating her with the same coldness she threw at me. I stopped being friendly and polite, adopting a highly weary tone whenever I had to interact with her. This standoffish attitude became customary for us, and as months passed, the whole office became aware of it. However, no one asked why, and Janice and I never addressed the issue. We simply let it be. Things took a weird turn when the boss assigned a project to both Janice and me. We had to work together and complete it within the given deadline. It was a challenging project requiring great attention to detail, collaboration, and assistance. I was horrified when I learned about it. After a day of contemplation, I mustered the courage to ask my boss to change my partner or assign the project to someone else. To my surprise, my boss reacted extremely. He flew into a rage, stating that he had just explained the project to her yesterday, and now I was requesting the same change. He emphasized that the company didn't operate by our rules and that he didn't care about our differences. We needed to grow up and resolve them to work on this project. I apologized and returned to my desk, contemplating how to make it work. Lost in my thoughts, I saw Janice approaching my desk. I was momentarily horrified, but she surprised me. She suggested that we could start discussing the project the next day if it was okay with me. She asked me to go through the slides and data and prepare well, using a very expressionless voice. I simply agreed, answering in the same manner. I let out a loud sigh as Janice left. This project is going to drive me crazy, I thought to myself. That evening, as I went through all the data and began working out rough plans, the impending collaboration with Janice weighed heavily on my mind. The following day, Janice arrived before me. I settled at my desk, and she came almost immediately, without a greeting, stating that she wanted to hear my plans first. Turning on my laptop, I showed her my rough drafts. Surprisingly, she expressed that she liked it and admitted she had yet to take that approach. She sounded slightly impressed, leaving me shocked at her sudden civility. She then shared her plans, and we coordinated, dividing the work between us for the next day. As we worked, we shared our progress and suggestions to improve it, keeping the conversation strictly work-related. The deadline approached, and it became apparent that completing the project on time was nearly impossible. Everyone else left for the day, and Janice and I worked quietly at our desks. By 8 in the evening, hunger struck, and despite the strained relationship, I felt it was inhuman not to ask her if she wanted to order food. Approaching her, I suggested ordering pizza and asked if she would like some. To my surprise, she looked up from her work and said yes. Shocked, I called Pizza Hut, ordered a large pizza with drinks and fries, paid for it, and brought it upstairs. When the delivery guy came, Janice took a break, and we sat down to eat. In a moment of boldness, I told her I wanted to ask something, but only if she promised to answer honestly. She hesitated but agreed. Summoning my courage, I finally asked why she hated me when we didn't know each other. She looked at me for a few seconds with a strange expression before answering that I didn't remember her at all. Puzzled, she clarified by revealing that we went to the same high school. As I worked on the project with Janice and memories of high school started flooding back, I realized who Janice truly was. In school, I used to be a popular guy, while Janice was a nerd. Reflecting on my past behavior, I acknowledged that I had been a jerk to her. I distinctly recalled roasting her when she expressed a desire to register as a cheerleader in front of the entire class. The realization hit me hard, and I felt a surge of embarrassment and shame. Unable to contain my remorse, I finally mustered the courage to apologize to her. I knew it might not erase the past, but Janice surprised me with a forgiving smile. She reassured me that it was all right and that she had held onto the grudge long enough. It was time to forgive. In an attempt to start fresh, I asked if we could become friends, and she agreed. From that day on, working on the project became enjoyable as the coldness between us evaporated, and we began to get along well. The transformation was so surprising that everyone in the office was taken aback. Jack, curious about the change, asked me, and I shared that Janice and I had become friends and resolved our issues. Our friendship extended beyond the office, and we started meeting outside work. Hours were spent in coffee houses, working and talking. Finally, when the project was submitted, it felt like a weight had been lifted off our chests. Our boss was delighted with our performance, praising us highly in front of everyone. Feeling a newfound connection, I approached Janice and, impulsively, asked her out. I expected rejection, but she surprised me again by saying yes. Excitement bubbled up within me as I planned our date, movies followed by lunch at a nearby cafe. The date went exceptionally well, and it felt surreal to witness the transformation from enemies to lovers. Within the next 6 months, I realized that Janice was the woman for me. Acknowledging that I might be moving too fast, I didn't care. I just didn't want to lose her. I tried to call her mine, so I planned to propose to her on our 6-month anniversary. We went for a picnic, and there, among the fields, I got down on my knees and did it. I knew I was being irrational and not thinking straight, so I expected a no from her. But, like all the other times, Janice did not disappoint me and admitted how much she loved me. We began planning our wedding, and the following year, we arranged a grand event. Everyone from the office was invited. Our marriage was going great. We had the same workplace timings, so we often left and returned to work together, unless one of us had to work late. It was good having each other around almost all the time. It becomes tiresome to some people, but I loved Janice so much, and being with her was never dull. Her presence just made me happy instantly. I moved to her house after we married, as it was closer to the office. I left my apartment for rent, and her home was completely furnished, so I did not have to take much over there. A few months later, this perfect marriage turned upside down. I was sitting in the kitchen waiting for the pasta to be cooked when I heard Janice's phone ring. I usually never do this, but for no reason that day, I checked her phone. As I was taking it to her, I froze right there as I saw the pictures sent to her. She was sitting in our bed with some guy I did not know, and she was wearing no clothes. It shocked me. She had cheated on me, and she dared to take pictures too. My world just crumbled in front of me. I was boiling from anger. I somehow stopped myself from just barging into the room and slapping her. Instead, I did a wise thing and sent those pictures to myself. The next day, she went to work, and I stayed home. Before she left, I attached all the images to a file she was supposed to send to the boss and head office. I got my basic stuff out of the house and set the house on fire, making it look like a kitchen accident so I wouldn't be suspected. Janice got fired from work that day. She called me, but I did not pick up her phone. I wondered what she would say to me as she got home. She found out about the fire and tried to reach me, but I dodged her. I had left the city to escape her for a few days while preparing for the divorce. She kept calling me, and I ignored her calls. A week later, I finally answered her call. She was bewildered about what was happening in her life and wanted to know where I had run off to. I told her I had found out about her cheating and admitted that I was the one who sent her pictures to the office. She couldn't utter a word on the phone. It was as if she had lost her voice. I informed her that I had filed for divorce, and she would receive the papers soon. When she mentioned the fire, I couldn't admit to it, of course. I showed fake sympathy, saying I was sorry but couldn't help her. She said she had no place to stay, and I made it clear that it was none of my problems. It didn't concern me anymore since she was nothing more than a cheating woman. Janice tried to apologize, but I cut the call right there. I had no tolerance for such crap. She kept calling me for many weeks, even sending drunk texts and voicemails after a few days. Eventually, I blocked her and cut off all contact. I had to do it to move on in my life. This end to my marriage and this massive heartbreak made me realize that she was always meant to be an enemy to me. Falling in love with my enemy was the biggest mistake of my life, and it's something I will always regret to some extent. I did get my revenge on her, which feels good.
Dear listener, if you have reached this far, please click on the subscribe button. It will be a great help.